It only seems a couple of weeks ago that we were reviewing a supplement for World War II in the Pacific, and that's because it was only 2 weeks ago. But now it's the turn of Battlegroup from Plastic Soldier Company to join the Pacific War arena. Battlegroup Pacific is a 204-page hardback with 6 additional pages of removable reference material. It covers the whole World War II Pacific campaign from start to finish. 13 chapters provide you with a historical overview, new rules, scenarios and army lists for the combatants. The book is further divided between the island-hopping US experience and the jungle foot-slog of the British and Commonwealth forces. First up is the history, which gives a comprehensive synopsis of the overall progress of the war. As well as a standard narrative, it has small box arts that highlight some interesting aspects of the campaign, the LMO Scouts and Kiyoshi Kamaiko being 2 that stood out. After the history lesson comes the first of the game additions, special rules that apply to the Pacific War. This section is named Danfor, after the operation to take the Japanese home islands. It is here that the Japanese lack of materiel but surfeit of bravery is modelled, from the Banzai Charge to the Love of Emperor, which allows the Japanese player extra beyond the Call of Duty roles. Japanese models will often need to be routed out to a man, while the Allied player is trying to cope with the less than eager war-weary soldiers. Of course, it wouldn't be the Pacific theatre without an amphibious assault or several. These kinds of scenario are much more prevalent here than in any other campaign book, and there's a lot to digest in a very short space in the book. The amphibious assault rules being designed to work with the existing rules rather than replace them. One standout point is that swimming infantry are in real danger of becoming casualties and losing their special weapons. The shortest section of the book details 3 new counters. 2 of these, the anti-tank booby trap and bonsai, offer benefits to the Japanese player. The other affects the Japanese off-board artillery and Japanese supply problems that severely affected their whole war. At page 52 we begin the army list intro, and we note that the Japanese player is allowed a maximum of 9 platoons in a brigade-sized game. Have fun moving those around. Of the army lists themselves, the Imperial Japanese Army is up first, beginning with a discussion of the forces and equipment used. We then move on to the army list proper. This is split between the Japanese Infantry Division, which is just for Burma actions, and the Japanese Island Garrison. Both have access to lots of defences, with the Island Garrison getting some extra coastal ones to make things even trickier. The last remnant platoon is here with the infamous unarmed squadrons, but they can only be taken if you have taken the HQ option of Kofu Shi Shiai. Interestingly, you won't know how many troops you have in the unarmed squadrons until the start of the game, as you roll 2d6 for each squad. Hot on the heels of the Japanese, in more ways than one, are the US. Following the same format as the Japanese list, there is a discussion of the Army and US Marines, along with their equipment. The first list is the US Marines, including fireteam structure, which is very interesting, giving the Marine player a lot more flexibility in roles and equipment than most infantry get. The Infantry Division does, however, have access to a self-propelled howitzer, which will be very useful for clearing holes. Terrain is up next, with descriptions of the various types of terrain that can be expected to be found in the Pacific, including the famous jungle and infamous coral outcrops. Your battles will be fought over some very difficult terrain at times, yet also might be devoid of any cover when attacking from the beach. All that terrain is going to be used in the following scenarios, 5 in all, detailing actions from the Pacific War. There are 2 for pullout, 2 for Okinawa, and a general amphibious assault scenario. The historic ones include suggested forces, while the amphibious assault scenario provides some extra rules for assaulting via the beach. This final scenario could be easily adapted for other theatres, and any what-ifs you should wish to fight. And remember, at the start of the war, it was the Japanese invading, not the US. You may have been wondering where the rest of the Allies have got to, and now we get to Burma, they're introduced, with a potted history of what went on from 1944. Sadly, the earlier fighting isn't covered. The army lists start in 1944 as well. There are Gurkhas and veteran assault troops if you want to add them. And there are also adjustments on the final 2 pages of the army list for fielding an Aussie themed force, like the Aussie Infantry Platoon, which surprisingly doesn't have a veteran option. Almost at the end we have an appendix, which is more a series of appendices. These cover the various bits of equipment the combatants used. Tanks, guns, aircraft, they're all here. And it is here that you will notice where the Japanese had their deficiencies. Their armour is certainly the worst of the three forces. The book ends with the 6 pages of pullout sheets, which provide you with vehicle cards for easy reference, tokens for use in the game, and a card reference sheet. I would laminate the reference sheet for longevity, as I'm not sure how long it and the tokens will stand up to much use. One small error is the use of small British arms on the Japanese player's pullout sheet, although I'm sure you can find evidence of the British using a Type 96 LMG somewhere. Overall, this is a very comprehensive and very well researched book. Warwick Kinraid certainly knows his stuff. It does seem somewhat skewed towards the US Marine Corps, even though the army did most of the fighting, and I would like to have seen some Japanese information to cover that part of the Eastern fighting, especially as they are unlikely to get their own campaign book. However, if you're a fan of the Battlegroup rules and are interested in a new theatre to collect and game, then this book needs to be on your shelf. This video has been brought to you by WI Prime, Wargames Illustrated Magazine's online members club. View more videos or find out more about WI Prime by following these links.